Well, joining me now is Tertiary Education Minister Joyce. Thanks for joining us this morning. So we know that there's going to be a sector-wide investigation now, but how much focus will fall on Māori tertiary institutions?
Well, it won't be a specific focus on Māori tertiary institutions. Frankly, every institution in New Zealand has funding rules that they must meet. That includes Wānanga, PDEs, ITPs, universities, and we take the same approach with any of them that do not meet those funding rules, and that's a recovery of any funding that should not have been paid over, and if necessary, further action in terms of further investigations. And that's what's happening in this case, but it's not about Māori institutions per se.
This case is what sparked the sector-wide investigation, though, isn't it? So we won't be focusing particularly or starting with perhaps Māori tertiary education. Will it start with these particular courses or institutions?
No, it'll be, as identified in your track, it'll be about courses with certain characteristics which are very fast-growing, unusually high levels of completions and reasonably high levels of subcontracting, which is when somebody else undertakes the course from the institution. But I think it's important that the Awanuiārangi case, which is a difficult case obviously for the institution, but underlines for every institution that we have funding rules, and there's a certain amount of trust there because institutions are independent, but we expect that trust to be honoured and not honoured in the breach. And so I think it'll lead to a certain amount of tidying up across hopefully only a few institutions to make sure that...
tidy up?
Making sure that they are meeting those funding responsibilities.
But how much of it falls on the honesty, I guess, of institutions or of individuals being found out before the TEC can act?
Well, I mean, I think the TEC is entitled to expect that institutions act honestly and within the rules, but if they don't, that they will get hit pretty hard in terms of the recovery of monies and, if necessary, reporting to other agencies such as serious fraud and or the police. And the Serious Fraud Office have taken an interest in one of the cases that's been identified with Awanuiārangi, and that's entirely appropriate.
When do you think we'll hear the outcome of that?
Well, I don't have any influence over the SFO investigations. I imagine they'll do what they're required to do, and at some point they'll tell everybody where they've got to.
What's your perception here? I mean, does this undermine and affect the credibility of Māori tertiary education institutes?
No, but I think there's a risk for every institution that has an issue in this regard, is that naturally enough people will look twice at their qualifications, and they'll look twice at the institution's reputation. There's no getting away from that. So Awanuiārangi will have to really re-earn the trust that's potentially lost through this issue.
So Weta Gardner, we just heard him saying that this will in fact strengthen those qualifications. Do you think that is the case, or does it, as you seem to be saying, it weakens them?
Well, it has an opportunity depending on how they react to it. But this is a serious issue. I mean, this is not something that we want to see in New Zealand's publicly funded and publicly owned institutions. And it's a serious issue for Awanuiārangi to get on top of, and it has damaged their reputation.
Who do you see as being the biggest losers in this?
Well, I think there's a real risk for everybody involved, obviously for the institution, but also for the students. But we do have a process. In fact, NZQA has a very strong process in terms of making sure that students have the opportunity to effectively make good. And the institutions are generally required to do that for the institutions without any further cost to the taxpayer or anybody else. So if there's a situation, let's say a PTE, for example, take it out of the current situation, which has had an issue with a qualification, then they are required to make good on that qualification by a means that the NZQA agrees with.
How did this go on for so long before it was found out?
Well, that's a question for Awanuiārangi. They really, I mean, the real question is for their internal audit procedures, why they didn't pick up that there was a problem in this regard for 4 years.
For you as well? I mean, you don't want to be handing out money willy-nilly to institutions that aren't handling it in the best and proper way.
Well, it's a concern, but again, the funding rules are there. They are very clear. There's a very clear expectations on institutions what to do. In this particular case, which was the Māori tourism qualification, changes were made that were not cleared with NZQA or TEC. So it's a case of you can't manage what you're not privy to, but it is a requirement on those institutions to do that. So it falls very clearly at the feet of Awanuiārangi. Now, tertiary institutions are very proud of their independence, and they often tell me how independent they are and how it's their job to be independent and not my job to tell them what to do every day. So they have to keep their side of the bargain, which is making sure that their their institutions are up to the mark and are properly audited and properly looked after.
We have to wrap very soon. So just let's throw forward. I mean, what's the government going to do to support Māori tertiary education?
Well, I think we've got some really good things going on here at the moment. We of course, Māori generally have not performed as well as other students in the tertiary education system in the past. We have seen big lifts, which I'm excited about in the last few years in terms of performance. But I think now that we're getting a strong economic uplift, we've really got to make sure that we really ensure that every young Māori that wants to participate in the New Zealand economy with the skills that they need gets that opportunity. And at first meeting with Te Whare Wānanga last week, I think we're going to work together very well. And I think we're going to end up with some surprisingly quick improvements in results.
Oh, I hope that is the case. We're going to be talking to him very soon. Yeah. Minister Stephen Joyce, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.